Hey guys, tonight we're setting out on horseback. Your cloak is soaked, the air smells of wet moss, and hooves sink softly into the leaf-strewn mud. Above you, towering oaks bend in the breeze like old men with crooked backs. A dense fog coils through the trees, so thick you can barely see the road ahead. Somewhere in the distance an owl calls out once and then goes quiet. You've been riding for hours. Your thighs sore, your back aching, the leather saddle damp with cold. You're a knight of moderate repute, not exactly famous, but well respected enough to get invited to castles and sometimes shouted at by barons who drink too much. Your last assignment took you far into the borderlands, boring patrols, long nights of boiled onions and very few battles, unless you count the one between your digestion and that last tankard of ale. As you pull your hood tighter, the fog thickens again, wrapping around your horse like old wool, and that's when you see it. Just to the left, where the forest clears, a strange silhouette. Your heart taps once, then races. It's a chapel, a small stone building with a collapsed bell tower, half swallowed by ivy. The path leading to it is overgrown and wild, as if no foot has touched it for years. The door hangs slightly ajar, creaking faintly. Every instinct tells you to ride on, back to camp, back to your overcooked stew and slightly resentful squire. But of course you don't. You dismount, boots sinking into soft moss, sword clanking at your side. There's something about the place. It's not threatening, just out of place, like it's been waiting. Inside it's darker than expected. Rows of broken pews lean like drunks after a festival. At the front, a cracked altar still holds the remnants of a once gilded crucifix. And there, just for a moment, you swear you hear a voice, your name, not loudly, not in anger or fear, just spoken softly, like someone reminding you they exist. You whip around, nothing. Probably a raven, you mutter, named Walter, terrible mimic. Still, your skin prickles. You take another step forward, your mail rustling with a faint chime, and peer behind the altar. Nothing but shadows. Outside, the fog has thickened again, erasing the path. You wait for your eyes to adjust, ears straining for a sound, a shift in air, the creak of floorboards. Nothing, well, almost nothing. There, against the back wall, a veil, draped over an old statue, number hanging in the air, and then, gone. You blink. Your breath curls in front of you now, colder than it should be. You step backward, gently, sword still sheathed, trying not to startle whatever this is. Ghost? Memory? Gas leak caused by medieval mushrooms? You've heard stories, but they always happen to someone else. Someone more foolish. And yet here you are. You spend the night back at camp, silent. Your squire asks what you saw. You lie. Just a broken chapel. But that night you dream of white veils, of hands that never touch, of a voice calling your name through stone and time. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You mount your horse again, not toward home, not toward duty, but back to the chapel. The next evening you tell your companions you're riding out to scout a new trail. Technically not a lie, but your squire squints at you like he knows it's less about roads and more about riddles. You wave him off and set off alone. The forest feels different this time, not quite welcoming, but familiar. The path winds through groves of damp birch, their white trunks catching what little light filters through the overcast sky. You hum to yourself, a lullaby your mother used to sing when you were small. It doesn't help. As you approach the chapel, the fog lifts just slightly, as if it's parting to let you in. The door creaks again, but this time you don't hesitate. Your hand lands gently on the hilt of your sword, just in case, though you have the strange sense that metal won't help here. Inside it's quiet. Then a whisper. Again, your name. You follow the sound to the altar where you'd seen the veil, or thought you had. The space behind it is empty, but the air is thicker, like the moment before thunder. Suddenly a soft shimmer passes near the stained glass window, and then you see her. A woman, tall, graceful, dressed in a white gown that flickers between form and shadow. A veil obscures her face, but her posture is unmistakable, elegant still, not frightened, watching you. Your mouth goes dry. Are you? But she's gone. Your voice echoes too loud in the silence that follows. You step closer, slowly, like approaching a deer that hasn't quite bolted yet. The floor creaks beneath your boots. You kneel at the altar. I'm not here to harm you, you say, feeling ridiculous. Just curious. A breeze curls around your face, even though the air is still, and then again your name, softer this time, closer. You don't see her appear. One moment she's not there, the next she is, standing at the front of the chapel, facing you. Her veil sways slightly, though there's no wind. You rise, heart thudding. You're not afraid, not exactly. Just stretched thin between wonder and fear. You reach out a hand, she tilts her head. A question, maybe, or amusement. You lower your hand again. What is this place, you ask? She doesn't speak, but you hear it. Home. Then she walks slowly to the far end of the chapel, her feet not quite touching the ground. She pauses at a side door, half buried by ivy, and looks back. You follow. Of course you follow. Behind the chapel is a tiny graveyard, overgrown and leaning, the names on the stones nearly erased. She glides to a small headstone, untouched by moss. Elowen, born 1274, died 1293. May she wait in light. You feel your chest tighten. 17. Barely more than a girl. You glance at her. Elowen? She nods, the veil fluttering slightly as if stirred by breath. You sit in the grass beside her grave. What happened to you? She kneels beside you, and then, somehow, you see it. Not in words, not quite in pictures, more like emotion wrapped in dream. A wedding night never completed, a groom who never arrived, a promise broken, rain falling on silk, a silence that never ended. She's been waiting. You stand again, the damp soaking through your leggings, and turn toward the forest. She doesn't stop you, but as you walk back you feel her behind you, not following, just lingering, watching. Historians still argue whether medieval knights were truly as brave as the stories claim, or if most simply acted out their fears with enough steel and ritual to make it look noble. You're starting to think the bravest thing you've ever done is walk away from that chapel, because now you know she's real, and you know you'll go back. One last detail. When you return to camp, your squire says something strange. You're early, he tells you. Didn't expect you back till morning. It's barely past midnight, but your hands are wet, with rain or something colder, and your dreams that night are filled with veils. Back at camp, sleep is thin and strange. Your bedroll feels wrong, too loud, too stiff, too earthly. The forest hum that usually lulls you to sleep is now a distant clatter, and your dreams are riddled with flickering candlelight and white lace fluttering at the edge of your vision. You wake up 4 times, breath held, waiting for something to shift in the tent, waiting for her. Elowen. You rise early, before the others. The fire's coals still whisper red under the ash. Your squire is snoring like a bear with sinus issues. You pour water from the skin, drink, and then wash your face in the icy stream nearby. It helps, a little. But nothing stops the ache in your chest. A strange weight that has nothing to do with armour or duty. That day you try to be useful. You help your men patch a broken cartwheel, inspect the horses, even mend a chainmail sleeve. But your thoughts keep drifting back to the chapel. To her. You hear your name whispered once near the edge of camp, but when you turn it's only the wind. Or maybe the trees. You're losing track of what's real. Everything all right, sir? Your squire asks. He's sharp for a boy his age, too sharp sometimes. Fine, you mutter, and give him the kind of look that discourages further questions. He gets the message, but the day drags on, and by nightfall your resolve has splintered. You ride out again, no excuse this time, just the truth, or something close enough to it. Need some air, you say, and no one stops you. The forest welcomes you again, almost too easily. The path to the chapel has become familiar now. Your horse seems to remember it too, trotting without hesitation. When you arrive, you pause at the entrance, hand resting on the carved stone frame. You expect silence. You receive music. Faint, delicate, harp strings from inside the ruined chapel. You step in, and the transformation is instant. Gone is the mouldy wood and crumbling stone. In its place, lanterns flickering gently along the walls, the pews restored, the altar gleaming, and the air warm. Spectres fill the space, dressed in centuries-old finery. Some sitting, some sway and dance, some whisper among themselves. None look surprised to see you. And at the centre, Elowen. She stands beneath a wrought-iron candelabrum that floats a few inches above her. Her veil is lifted just enough for you to glimpse her mouth, smiling. You take a cautious step forward. What is this? An evening we never had. Her voice floats to your ears, not quite spoken. You look around. The ghostly guests don't seem threatening. They move as if stuck in memory, like dancers repeating the same waltz for centuries. Elowen walks toward you, gliding rather than stepping. She holds out a hand. You hesitate only a moment, then you take it. Her fingers are cool, like early morning mist, but not unpleasant. Together you walk to the centre of the chapel floor as the music swells slightly. You dance. You, a half-tired, sceptical knight with mud on your boots, dancing with a ghost bride beneath spectral lanterns in a ruin that no longer seems ruined. The moment stretches, soft and slow, like a lullaby drawn across time. "Why me?" you whisper. She leans in, because you listened. Your steps slow, the music fading. Around you, the spectres begin to blur, their forms dimming. You blink, and the chapel returns to its present state. Broken, shadowy, full of dust and cold. Elowen is still there. So are you. Historians still argue whether reports of medieval hauntings were genuine encounters, hallucinations, or exaggerated campfire stories meant to spook squires into staying close. But you're starting to suspect none of them ever danced with the dead. You kneel before her, not out of duty, but something older, something softer, and though she doesn't touch you again, you feel the echo of her hand on yours long after she fades. You don't ride straight back this time. You walk, slowly, letting the moon guide you, letting the memory of harp strings linger in the air behind you. Tonight your dreams are not haunted. They are full of music. The next morning, camp is already in motion when you arrive. Horses being brushed, tents collapsing into tight rolls, someone loudly losing an argument with a pot of oatmeal. You dismount, your joints stiff, your mind somewhere far from here. Your squire eyes you. You all right? You look hollow. I'm fine, you lie again. But this time your voice lacks the steel to make it convincing. He doesn't press, just hands you a mug of something warm and tragically overcooked. You drink it anyway. The caravan moves on by noon, winding slowly east toward the next outpost. For hours, the rhythm of hooves and wheels lulls you into a daze. You catch yourself watching the tree line, wondering if you'll catch a flicker of white silk through the trees. You don't. By evening, you're leagues from the chapel. But her memory is packed in your saddlebag like a letter you haven't opened. At night, you sleep on damp grass and wake with her name on your lips. A week passes like that. Then two. Duties pile up. A border squabble needs arbitration. A lord's son runs off with a stable girl and you're tasked with politely retrieving him. Bandits strike a grain convoy and your sword gets its first taste of blood in months. You move, command, eat, speak. But none of it feels yours. One afternoon, during a strategy meeting in a smoke-thick tent, the lord you're advising mispronounces your name twice. The third time, you don't correct him. You realise you don't quite care. That night, alone at the riverbank, you sketch her name into the sand. Elowen. A name like a breeze through reeds. It looks wrong in your rough script, but feels right in your heart. You whisper it aloud and wait. Nothing answers. The next day, you ask the quartermaster for leave. He frowns. Sick. You shake your head. Something older than sickness. He raises an eyebrow but grants it. No one wants a distracted knight near their supply lines. You ride fast, this time without hesitation. When you reach the familiar forest edge, the trees seem to lean a little closer, as if they've missed you. The air grows cool, the birdsong less insistent. By the time you see the chapel roof peeking above the rise, your heart has already begun to race. You dismount, heart pounding like a drum. You almost run. The door opens at your touch. Inside, silence. The pews are as broken as before, the altar dust-covered, the graveyard still blanketed in ivy and shadow. You wait. Minutes pass, then she appears. Not from thin air this time, but from behind a broken arch, walking as though she's simply been in another room. She looks the same, pale and glowing faintly, eyes hidden behind her veil. She pauses, tilts her head. You came back, you say, breathless. You remembered me, she answers. Not aloud, but as always, inside your head, soft as a lullaby. You step forward. She reaches out. Your fingers don't quite meet, but the closeness is enough. That night you stay, not out of duty, not out of fascination, but out of a sense that somehow the story you belong to isn't the one written for you. Not anymore. You lie beside her grave, wrapped in your cloak. She sits nearby, watching over you like a guardian you never asked for, but deeply need. Historians still argue whether the medieval concept of courtly love ever truly existed, or if it was more performance than passion. But as you close your eyes and drift into sleep, her presence near, you know this is no performance, this is love. And it's terrifying, because now you can't imagine leaving her again. You wake to bird song and the smell of damp stone. The sun filters through the cracks in the chapel walls, painting pale light across the altar. For a moment, you forget where you are, until you see her. Eowyn stands near the crumbling stained glass, her form shimmering faintly in the morning rays. She looks like a painting half finished, as if some divine hand ran out of time. You sit up slowly, your back stiff from sleeping on moss and weathered floorboards. You stayed, you say, though it sounds ridiculous. Of course she did. Where else could she go? She doesn't answer, but her veil sways as though in agreement. You feel the strange warmth of her presence wrap around you like a heavy wool cloak. I want to know everything, you whisper. About you, about this place, why I can't stay away. She glides to a cracked pew and gestures, not commands for you to sit. You do, and then slowly she begins to show you. Images flicker in your mind, not sharp like memories, but soft and dreamlike. The chapel in its glory, fresh white walls, golden candlesticks, laughing guests in velvet and pearls, her wedding day. She was 17, betrothed to a knight named Aldrich. They had met only once, briefly, but his letters were kind, his voice gentle. She was nervous, hopeful. He never arrived. Storms raged the night before the wedding. His carriage overturned on the old bridge. Some said sabotage, others said fate. His body was never found. Her wedding day became a funeral. But no one thought to bury the bride. Instead, she remained, waiting. You feel her grief like a fog in your chest, a sorrow that has no bottom. The villagers stopped coming, the chapel decayed, and she faded. Not entirely, not completely, but enough. Why me? You ask again, your voice quieter this time. She tilts her head, because you listened. The same answer, but now layered with something more, because you felt what others ignored. You glance around. Are the others real? The guests, the music? A memory, she says, a gift I can borrow for a time, but they are echoes. You remember the feast, the ghostly dancers, the harp that played itself. Echoes, yes, but lovely ones. Can you leave this place? She hesitates. The word is both answer and sentence. You nod slowly. And if I stayed? This time she does not respond. Historians still argue whether ghosts in medieval folklore were believed to be literal spirits, or allegories for unresolved sin, lost love, or even madness. You wonder what they'd say about a knight considering marriage to a ghost in a ruined chapel. The light shifts. You've been sitting here for hours. Your stomach growls, your limbs ache. She notices, and the air changes. A breeze curls around you, bringing the faint smell of bread and thyme. You look down. In your hand, a crust of warm bread, simple but real. You blink. She's conjured it. You eat slowly, reverently, grateful. It tastes like childhood. As dusk falls, the chapel shifts again. Not fully, not like during the feast. Just slightly. Lanterns flicker to life, casting golden halos across the stone. And for the first time, Eowyn sits beside you. Not quite touching, but close. You speak of your life, your training, your missteps, the time you fell off a horse in front of the bishop. She laughs, though it sounds more like chimes than a voice. Still, it feels good. I don't want to leave again, you murmur. She looks at you, and then she says, then don't. The simplest curse, the deepest promise. You sit there until the moon rises and the stars come out one by one, like candles lit in a cathedral above the world. You stay the night. And for the first time in years, you sleep without armour. The next morning arrives gently, as if the sun knows not to wake you too harshly. You stretch under your cloak, bones cracking like old timber, and you half expect the chapel to vanish around you, for Elowen to be just another morning after dream. But she's still there. She stands quietly near the open archway where the bell tower once was, her veil lifted slightly in the light, and for a moment she looks more alive than you feel. A strange comfort blooms in your chest. You rise and brush moss from your back. "Good morning," you say, and feel absurd all over again. But she nods. Then she points. You follow her gaze to the far wall of the chapel where ivy clings like a curtain. Behind it, a doorway, one you've never noticed. You walk to it, peel back the vines, and reveal a narrow staircase spiralling downward. "Should I?" you murmur. Elowen simply stands still. She doesn't beckon, but you understand. You descend. The air grows colder with each step, the scent turning to damp earth and stone. At the bottom, a crypt, half collapsed, walls lined with nameless ossuaries. You lift a rusted torch from the wall, miraculously still in place, and the moment you do, it sparks to life, casting golden light across the chamber. In the centre, a sarcophagus, unmarked, sealed with iron bands. You approach slowly. Something thrums under your feet, like a heartbeat buried in stone, and then the whisper comes again. Not your name this time. Aldrich, her groom. You kneel beside the tomb. The air shimmers. Elowen is there, behind you, not stepping in, just watching. "He's here?" you ask. "What's left?" You run your fingers along the iron. "And he never came?" "He did," she says, "just too late." And now the image returns, stronger than before, a storm, a crash, water swallowing a scream, a soul lost and drifting, not at peace. You turn back to her. "You're tied here because of this?" She nods once. Historians still argue whether binding spirits to physical places was a genuine medieval belief or a clever excuse for why certain castles always felt so cold. You've never cared much for such debates. Now, you only care about the truth in front of you. You place your palm against the sarcophagus. "If I helped him find rest, would you be free?" Elowen doesn't answer. Instead, she steps forward at last and kneels beside you. Her hand hovers near yours, close enough for warmth you shouldn't feel, but do. You stay there, 2 nights in mourning. One for what was, one for what never had the chance to be. Later, back in the chapel, you find an old book half buried under rubble near the altar. A prayer book, written in a delicate hand. You open it. The front page bears a name, Elowen Merel, bride of the chapel of Saint Miriam. You run your fingers over the ink. "Did you write this?" She floats closer. "On the night I waited." The book falls open to a page with a faded ribbon tucked in. A prayer for safe passage. One spoken by brides in the hope their beloved returns. You read it aloud. Each word rings with power, not magical but emotional, anchored in time and yearning. When you finish, she leans in. You feel her presence like a weightless breath against your shoulder. "Thank you." That night you sleep in the chapel once more, and when you dream, it's of a man in soaked armour, walking from the river toward a chapel bathed in golden light. Elowen waits on the steps, her veil lifted, her smile radiant, and for once, he reaches her. You wake with tears on your face. She's beside you. You don't speak. You don't need to. You begin to realise something's shifting, not just in her or in the chapel, but in you. The world outside feels thinner now. When you ride to the nearby village for bread and news, everything seems a shade too loud. The chatter in the tavern clatters like dropped dishes. The smell of smoke is too sharp. The face is too flushed. You barely register the baker's smile when he hands you a still warm loaf. You don't belong here anymore. You only feel whole when you're on that winding path again, heading back toward the forest, the air growing quieter, the trees thick with the scent of moss and damp pine. It's a strange thing to miss someone who never truly lived beside you, but the truth hums in your chest. You miss her, desperately. That night, back at the chapel, you find Elowen standing at the graveyard's edge. The mist curls around her ankles, and the moonlight turns her veil into silver thread. You approach, slowly. "What are we doing?" you ask. She looks at you, tilts her head slightly. I don't mean this in a bad way. You're here. I'm here. But I'm not dead, Ellawen. Not yet, she replies gently. And it doesn't sound like a threat, it sounds like inevitability. You sit beside her. The grass is cold through your cloak. I don't want to die, you say, more to the night than to her. But I don't want to leave you either. She doesn't respond. Instead, she raises her hand and points toward a small cluster of graves you haven't noticed before. You rise, brush off the damp and walk toward them. Each stone bears only a date. No names, no epitaphs. But the dates, they span centuries, long gaps between them. You step back, cold prickling at your spine. You've done this before, you whisper. She doesn't deny it. You spin to face her. How many? Not many, she says. Enough. Did they all stay? She doesn't answer, but the silence speaks volumes. You're not angry. You're not frightened either. You just feel hollow. Why me? Because you loved me first. And that stops you cold. You never said it aloud, not even to yourself. But it's true. You remember the first time you saw her, just a shimmer in the ruined chapel. The feeling that bloomed in your chest like spring after a long winter. The way her voice curls around your name like it belonged to her. You do love her. It makes no sense. It is terrifying. It is also the most certain thing you've ever known. Historians still argue whether love in the Middle Ages was more duty than desire. Marriages for land, alliances bound in silken silence. But stories like Tristan and Isolde, Lancelot and Guinevere whisper that something deeper always burned beneath the surface. You stare at the unmarked graves, then back at her. I don't want to be a name you forget, you say. I never forget, she replies. I want to be the last, you whisper, if I stay. No more after me. She walks toward you, her form glowing faintly in the moonlight. Then you must promise something. You nod. You must promise to never stop remembering the life you had. Never forget the sun, the smell of bread, the ache of your sword arm. Bring those memories here. Fill this place with them. Anchor me to the living. You breathe, long and slow. I can do that. She steps closer. Your hands pass through each other, but the warmth remains. That night you build a fire in the chapel. For the first time in years, flame dances across the stone. You sit together in its glow, and though she doesn't eat, she watches you break bread and sip wine from your travel flask. She listens as you tell stories of your youth, chasing frogs, falling from apple trees, getting caught stealing honey. She laughs, that bell chime sound that makes your chest ache and your lips smile. This time when you sleep you dream of her standing in sunlight, and you are there beside her, alive. The following days unfold like petals in slow bloom. You rise with the sun, gather herbs and berries from the surrounding forest, and return to the chapel each evening with some small gift. A wildflower, a smooth river stone, the memory of a bird song. You speak them aloud, lay them on the altar like offerings, and Ellawen listens. She's quieter now. Not absent, just softer. As if she's begun to believe something might change. That hope, long ago frozen in her, is beginning to thaw. One morning she appears before you as you're boiling water for tea in a dented tin pot. She motions to the side of the chapel, near the old confessional booth, and vanishes before you can ask. You follow. Behind the panelling you find something unexpected. An old tapestry, moth-bitten but intact, rolled and hidden behind loose stones. You unroll it gently, brushing off dust, revealing a scene in faded gold and red. A knight kneels before a veiled woman who hovers, not standing but floating above a grave. In his hands, a ring. In hers, a crown of thorns. You study the faces, notice the resemblance, the veil, the posture. It's her, Ellawen, or someone like her. The inscription at the bottom reads in Latin, "That which love binds, death may not sever." You whisper it aloud, once, twice. Each time it feels heavier. You take the tapestry to the altar. Ellawen reappears, silent, but watching. "This is us, isn't it?" you ask. She doesn't answer, but her form seems to flicker slightly, as if the image has stirred something deep. Later that day, as you clear vines from the outer wall, you uncover another piece of the puzzle, a worn carving just below the chapel window. It's a symbol, an intertwining knot of two hearts pierced by a single arrow. Not the sigil of any noble house you know. You trace it with your fingers. Was this your crest? It was our vow, she replies faintly. You pause? You and Aldrich? No, she says, and for the first time you hear something new in her voice. Fear. You turn slowly. Who was it then? She doesn't speak. She simply walks through the ruined wall and into the woods, her shape dissolving into the trees. You don't follow, not yet. Instead, you sit on the chapel steps watching the sky turn gold. You think about the tapestry, about the symbol, about the promise etched into stone and memory. You're starting to wonder if Aldrich was only part of the story. That night you search the old crypt again. This time, behind a crumbled wall, you find a second sarcophagus, smaller, older. Its stone is cracked, and the lid ajar. Inside, bones, wrapped in remnants of fabric too fine to have belonged to a priest. A ring lies atop the ribcage. You lift it carefully. It's warm. When you climb back up, Elowen is waiting. You hold out the ring. This wasn't his, was it? Then who? She looks at you. Mine. The words strike you harder than steel. Historians still argue whether medieval women ever had agency in their own love stories, whether they chose or were chosen. But Elowen's gaze tells you, she chose, once, and paid the price. You were engaged before, you say slowly, before Aldrich. Yes, and the ring was a promise I was forced to bury. You understand now. The other man, the true groom, was buried beneath this chapel, hidden, forgotten, erased. And Elowen was promised to another. The ceremony was held, but her heart stayed loyal to the grave. No wonder she lingered. You place the ring on the altar. Elowen steps toward it, fingers trembling as she reaches, but her hand passes through. It won't stay. It needs something, you murmur, a second vow. She looks at you. You feel the weight of the moment settle on your shoulders. The chapel, the graves, the tapestry, the ghost. None of this was random. You were meant to find her. Or maybe she was meant to find you. I'm not the first knight you've loved, you say softly. But I can be the last. She glows, faint and golden, and the ring begins to shimmer. You don't speak for a long time after that. The ring sits on the altar like it belongs there, humming faintly with something deeper than magic. Memory, perhaps. Regret. Or hope. You sit beside Elowen near the crumbled window, the two of you watching dusk roll in like a soft tide. There's peace in the silence, the kind that rarely exists in the waking world. No orders to follow, no horns to sound. Just the gentle hush of wind curling through the chapel and the steady presence of something ancient beside you. Finally you break the silence. Who was he? Elowen doesn't answer in words. Instead, she brushes her hand through the air and a shimmer begins to form between you. It resolves into a vision, not quite real, not quite imagined. You see her, younger, in the courtyard of a once beautiful estate. She laughs as a young man in plain armour kneels before her, hands her a ring with shaking fingers. No titles, no dowries, just love, raw and unadorned. You feel the ache rise in your chest before she even speaks. We weren't supposed to wed, she says, but we did, in secret, just days before the arranged match. Then, Aldrich never knew. And when your husband died, I was forbidden to mourn him. Her voice cracks like wind through reeds. They locked me here, said the wedding would continue, that I would be wed again. Your jaw tightens. You know how little choice women like her had. Marriage was a contract. Feelings were incidental. And when Aldrich's carriage crashed, the chapel was sealed. The family fled. They left me in silence. You feel sick, but Elowen remains calm, almost serene. She's told this story 1,000 times in silence. Now, it finally has ears. You rise, pacing the chapel. You were buried in memory, not just your love, but your life. She nods. And then she says something that makes you stop mid-stride. I wasn't supposed to stay, but I refused to leave him behind. You look back to the crypt, to the second broken tomb. Elowen, you say slowly, what happened to his name? She hesitates. They tried to erase it. The priest scraped it from the stone. You run a hand through your hair. But why not yours? They couldn't. Why? She looks at you, and in that moment you see it. Not just the ghost or the bride or the memory. You see the steel beneath the silk, the defiance, the kind of strength that only the forgotten ever learn. Because I held on. You nod, slowly. And now you've held on to me. She says nothing. She doesn't need to. Later you ride to the monastery a few miles east. You don't expect to find much. Old monks, older scrolls, and worse handwriting. But something calls you there. The head monk is suspicious but kind. A ghost bride, he says. My son, you've been reading too many poets. You don't argue. You simply ask for any record from the year of her death. He waves you off, but after a few coins change hands, he gestures toward the back. You dig through old scrolls until your hands are stained with dust and wax, and then, there it is. A weathered parchment, torn in the corners, the ink nearly gone. Marriage certificate, Elowen Morel to Sir Rennick of Ethelwood. Not Aldrich, Rennick. You fold it carefully and carry it back, heart pounding. At the chapel Elowen waits. You show her the paper. She lifts a hand, and for the first time, you see her eyes. Pale green, no longer veiled, they shine. You lay the document beside the ring. Now they will remember him, she whispers. You sit quietly, your back against a cold stone wall, her form flickering just inches away. Historians still argue whether true names held power in medieval folklore, whether speaking them could summon, or banish, or bind. You're no scholar. But tonight, when you whisper Rennick into the chapel air, it feels like opening a locked door. And for the first time you hear a second voice answer hers. Software male. Thank you. The air in the chapel changes. It's subtle at first. The hush of a place long sealed beginning to breathe again. The dust settles. The candle stubs on the altar give off a faint glow, though you haven't lit a single one. The very walls seem to sigh. Elowen stands straighter now, no longer flickering quite so much. Her form feels steadier, her features clearer. She's still not of this world, but somehow more present in it. You sit quietly, watching the ring and the scroll rest beside each other. Two small objects that once meant everything to someone, now rediscovered, reunited. Elowen kneels beside them. You hear her voice again, not in your head this time, but real, gentle, whispered. Rennick. And then he appears. You don't scream, but you do jump just a bit. He stands across the chapel, armour worn but shining faintly, a sword at his hip, eyes gentle but piercing. He's younger than you'd expected, no older than you are now. His face is thin, pale, and when he looks at Elowen it's as if the centuries melt. He steps forward slowly as if he's afraid she'll vanish. But she doesn't. They stand only inches apart, though they don't touch. Their hands hover near each other, almost trembling. You rise awkwardly. Should I leave? Neither of them answer, but you take that as a yes. You step outside into the graveyard. Cold night air brushing your face. Stars hang heavy overhead. The fog is lighter now, almost transparent. For a long while, you simply stand there, waiting. You think about what you've seen. Historians still argue whether ghosts linger because of unfinished business, or if they are kept tethered by the living who refuse to forget. You wonder which one of you was anchoring the other. Behind you, a sound. You turn. Elowen stands in the doorway, alone. You blink. Where's... Gone, she says. He's free. You step closer. And you? She tilts her head. I stayed. But why? She doesn't answer right away. Then she walks down the steps to you, the hem of her gown brushing the moss. She gazes up at the stars, then at you. Because I wasn't finished. You laugh softly. That makes two of us. You sit together under the moonlight, her hand never quite touching yours, yet somehow more comforting than a dozen warm embraces. Do you think they'll believe me, you ask? The monks, the scribes, my squire? Do you need them to? You think on that? No. You tell her everything. About the world beyond the forest. The wars brewing, the new taxes, the way roads are improving, but no one is ever truly safer. She listens like she's never heard any of it before. Like each detail is a precious coin you've unearthed. You tell her how you once thought about becoming a priest. She laughs. You admit it didn't last long. Too many rules, not enough wine. She laughs again, louder this time. The sound echoes warm and hollow and real. Then her laughter fades, and she says something you didn't expect. Do you regret finding me? You turn to her. Number never. She nods slowly. Then she stands. There's something you should see. You follow her across the graveyard, past the broken stones and leaning crosses, to a small grove where the moonlight doesn't reach. There, nestled between tree roots and thyme, is a stone you've never noticed. It bears your name. Not a joke, not a dream. It's your name, not fully etched. The letters are light, unfinished, but they're there. Your stomach tightens. Eluan. It's not prophecy, she says gently, just a place that could be. Have others seen this? Only one. He walked away. You kneel in front of it. Touch the stone. The cold seeps into your fingers. Will I be next? She's silent. Do I want to be? Still silent. The breeze picks up. An owl calls. Far away, something rustles in the underbrush. You feel the world pressing in, asking you to decide. But not tonight. You rise, brushing dirt from your knees. Let's go back. And together you return to the chapel where the ring and scroll still rest, and your name waits in stone beneath a grove of trees. You sleep in the chapel that night with one eye open. Not out of fear, no, you passed that long ago. But because part of you is still waiting for that tombstone to vanish, for the ring to stop glowing, for Elowen to disappear like smoke in wind. But none of that happens. The moon arcs through the stained glass frame, casting fractured colour across the pews. Somewhere near the altar, a ghostly draught keeps the candles flickering. Elowen sits nearby, humming a tune that barely exists anymore, something you think you heard once in a noblewoman's hall years ago during a harvest banquet. You roll to your side. You said someone else saw the stone. Yes. And he left. He tried. That catches your attention. You push yourself up on one elbow. Tried? Elowen doesn't look at you. She stares forward, her hands resting in her lap like a statue suddenly come to life. He walked into the forest, left me behind. But the chapel stayed with him. Every time he slept, he woke with dirt on his boots, sap in his hair. He started hearing my voice in fountains, mirrors, windows. One day he went mad and wandered back. You sit fully upright now. So, you're bound to him? Number, he was bound to the decision he didn't make. You think about that. You think about the decision you haven't made. The chapel suddenly feels warmer. Or is that your own blood racing? Historians still argue whether medieval hauntings were rooted in guilt or divine punishment. But the idea of being haunted by an unmade choice, that's something no priest ever warned you about. You rub your hands together and exhale. So, let me guess. If I walk away now, I'll still see you in puddles and candle smoke. Yes. You stand, stretch, and groan as your back cracks like an old door. And if I stay, then you'll sleep beside someone who never ages. You walk slowly to the window. Outside, the fog swirls lazily over the headstones. Somewhere in the distance, a fox yips once, then falls quiet. You said I'd have to remember the world, you murmur, to bring it here, the bread, the sound of horses, the feel of rain on skin. Yes, you glance back at her. What about me? What do I get in return? She steps forward, slowly. There's sadness in her glow now. Not cold, not cruel, just ancient. Me. And that one word hits harder than any lance ever has. You look at her, really look, at the faint glow of her outline, at the way the veil no longer hides her face, at the eyes that have watched lifetimes pass without blinking. She's not asking for rescue. She never was. She's asking for partnership. You sit on the edge of the altar platform, elbows on knees, breathing shallow. I don't want to forget the world. You don't have to. I'm afraid. So am I. You laugh. It comes out sharp, cracked. You're a ghost. I'm still a woman. You stay like that for a long time. Two souls in separate orbits, somehow pulled toward the same quiet gravity. Then she speaks again. There's one thing left. You turn. What? She walks to the back of the chapel to a slab of stone you had always assumed was part of the foundation. She brushes it with one translucent hand, and it lifts, slowly, impossibly, revealing a hollow underneath. Inside, a box, wooden, carved with a crest you don't recognize. You lift it carefully and bring it to the altar. Inside are letters, dozens, all in Elowen's hand, all addressed to you. You blinked, she looks down. Every time I thought you'd come, I wrote, Just in case, you open the first. "Dear one," it begins, "I hope your cloak kept you warm this evening." It's dated 1321. You read the 2nd, the 5th, the 12th. Each one imagines you, describes you, hopes for you. You place them gently back inside, and for the first time since arriving at this strange ruined place, you weep. Not for her, for yourself. Because some part of you had been wandering your whole life to find her, and you hadn't even known it. You don't sleep that night. Not truly. You lie beside the cold stone wall, the wooden box of letters resting near your head, Elowen sitting silently beside it. Every so often, your fingers drift toward the box, as if to confirm it's still there. Still real. The fire you lit earlier has long since died out, but the chapel doesn't feel cold. Not anymore. The morning comes slowly, grey, quiet. The forest beyond the chapel wall seems to hold its breath. You rise stiffly, joints complaining, and step outside into the dew-covered graveyard. The grass sparkles like someone scattered salt crystals through the earth. You walk past the gravestones. Elowens, Rennick's, the nameless ones, the ones marked only with dates. And then yours, still faint, still unfinished. You kneel before it and run your fingers across the surface. No new letters have appeared, but the shape of your name is unmistakable. It sits heavy in your gut. "I don't know what to do," you whisper. Behind you, the wind rustles softly through the trees. You stay there for a while, until Elowen speaks again from the chapel door. Then let the chapel decide. You blink, turning to her. "What?" She steps closer, her veil nearly brushing the gravestone. Let it show you what staying truly means. Not the fantasy, not the warmth, the truth. You stare at her, at the clarity in her eyes, and you nod. "Then show me." She raises a hand, and the world changes. Suddenly, the trees bend away, the fog peels back, and you're no longer kneeling in a forgotten ruin, but standing in a version of the chapel that lives only in her memory. It is whole again. The roof is high, the glass unbroken, sunlight pouring in through the rose window, candles burn at the altar, the pews gleam with polish. Somewhere in the air, incense swirls. You hear music, but no one plays. And then, life begins. You see yourself. Not the armoured knight, but simpler. Plain clothes, a rough tunic, dirt under the nails, living here, sweeping the floor, baking bread, tending herbs behind the chapel wall, reading aloud to no one, then speaking to someone unseen. A pause, a laugh, a silence. Years pass, your hair turns grey, your hands grow slower, but Elowen never changes, always near, always out of reach. You see yourself grow weary, sick. You lay in a cot near the altar, Elowen beside you, unchanged, weeping without tears. Then darkness. The chapel fades, and you're back in the fog, kneeling beside the half-finished gravestone. You exhale, hard. You rise, hands trembling. You feel older, though no time has passed. "She showed me what you'd become," you say softly, as Elowen walks slowly toward you. "That's only one path," she says. You nod. "But it's the honest one." She bows her head. "I didn't want to trick you." "I know." The wind shifts again. A single autumn leaf tumbles from the trees and lands atop your name. You pick it up, stare at its veins. "I'd be happy," you murmur. "I'd live gently, quietly, and die in a place where I was loved." She steps closer. "But you'd leave the world behind." You look at her now with new eyes, not as a bride or a spirit or a fantasy, but as someone real, someone lonely. "Have you ever asked yourself," you say, "what it would mean for you to leave this place? To try living again, even if only in memory?" She looks startled, as if the idea had never occurred to her. "You've been waiting for a groom, or a knight, or salvation. But maybe you deserve to go, Elowen. To choose something else. Someone else." She blinks. Her veil flutters. "Would you come with me?" You pause. Your breath fogs in the cold morning air. "I might," you whisper, "but only if you want more than this chapel." The silence that follows is different this time, no longer haunted, but filled with the weight of choice. You don't press her for an answer. You simply wait. Elowen stands still in the soft morning light. her form glowing faintly at the edges as if unsure whether to solidify or vanish. The chapel behind her groans in the breeze, a sound like old bones turning beneath stone. Around you the forest watches without judgment. "I don't want you to fade," you say. She looks at you, her voice is barely a breath. "Then let me remember." You blink. "Remember what?" "Everything you've told me. Everything I've forgotten. The world, the sky, the sound of horses crossing a bridge at dawn. Your voice." She walks to the altar where the wooden box of letters still rests. She places her palm atop it and closes her eyes. "Your stories are changing me. You feel it too. The chapel no longer chills you like it once did. It's less of a tomb now, more of a threshold. And Elowen, she's less shadow, more starlight. Still not fully alive, but not quite dead." "Let's try something," you say. She watches you curiously as you walk outside, gather stones from the forest's edge, and return with a bundle wrapped in your cloak. You clear a small space near the back of the chapel, where grass has begun to grow again, and begin stacking the stones one by one, building a small circle. Elowen floats nearby. "What is this?" "A fire pit," you say. "We're going to make tea." "I don't drink tea. Doesn't matter." You build the fire slowly, explaining each step aloud as if to a child. You let her touch the herbs. Rosemary, mint, a sprig of something you found that smells faintly of honey. You let her watch you boil the water, steep the leaves, and when you sip, she watches as if trying to taste through you. You pass her the cup. Her fingers move through it, but she smiles. "I think this is what you've needed," you say softly. "A reminder of life, not just waiting for someone to die beside you." She turns to you. "And if I leave this place? What am I then?" You shrug. "Maybe a ghost with better tea preferences." She laughs, a real one. You both sit by the little fire, and for a moment it feels almost ordinary. You pull out the parchment you took from the monastery. Rennick's name, the record of the secret marriage. "I'm going to copy this," you tell her. "Twice. One for the monks, one for me." She nods slowly. He deserves to be remembered. You glance at her. So do you. Later you take her to the river. It's not far, a small glassy stream that winds through the pines behind the graveyard. You remove your boots, wade in, feel the shock of cold slice up your calves. She hovers just above the water, watching ripples form where you step. "Touch it," you say. She does. For the first time the water bends just slightly around her fingertips. You both stare in awe. Historians still argue whether ghosts could become more human through memory, or whether that was just romantic nonsense scribbled by lonely scribes. But here you are, watching a woman long dead leave fingerprints in a living stream. "Elowen," you whisper, "you're changing." So are you. You sit on the rocks, water lapping at your heels, and tell her about the first fish you ever caught. The fear, the pride, the disaster of trying to cook it and setting your sleeve on fire. She listens with her chin resting on her hand, veil pulled back. "I'm still afraid," you say. "Me too. But not of you anymore." She leans forward. "Then what?" You look toward the chapel. "I'm afraid of wanting this so much I lose everything else." She nods. "Then take what you need. Leave what you don't. I'll be here." That night you don't sleep in the chapel. You sleep beneath the stars, beside the stream, your boots still damp, your heart still thudding, and for once you dream of both worlds, hers and yours, not as rivals, but as neighbours. You wake with sunlight pouring through the leaves like liquid gold. The stream nearby gurgles softly, a sleepy tune of its own. Your cloak is damp with dew, and your back aches from the stones beneath you, but you've never felt more rested. You sit up, stretch, and glance around. She's there, Elowen, floating quietly nearby, watching as you shake the leaves from your tunic and splash your face with cold water. Her expression is thoughtful, almost amused. "You watch me sleep now?" you ask with a smirk. You snore slightly when you're comfortable. You grin. "So I'm getting better at it." She nods once. "You're becoming part of this place." You stand slowly, walking to where she hovers above the moss. "And what about you?" She pauses, then answers. "I remember the feel of sunlight now." You blink. "You feel it?" "Not like you do, but I know what it used to be. My skin used to freckle in the sun. I'd forget my gloves and burn my hands during summer harvests." She touches her shoulder where the glow is warmest. "Now I remember how that hurt, how alive it felt. You both fall silent. You walk together toward the chapel. It's become routine now, moving between the woods and that broken, holy place like a ritual. A pattern you never meant to create but now can't imagine undoing. When you step through the doorway, you pause. Something has changed. The chapel looks cleaner. No new stones, no repairs, but the dust is thinner. The air less stagnant. A single flower has bloomed near the altar where you laid the scroll. Elowen, is it you? Maybe, she says, tilting her head. Maybe it's you. You walk down the aisle and sit where a pew once stood. I think this place is waking up, you say. It remembers. You look at her. Is that dangerous? Only if we forget again. The idea strikes you deeply. All of this, her lingering spirit, the chapel's unrest, your own wandering, it all seems rooted in memory, in what's kept alive and what's allowed to fade. You glance toward the altar and the scroll, then the ring still resting beside it. You said I could choose, you murmur, but what if I can't? Then wait. Wait. You don't need to decide today. You let out a breath you didn't realize you were holding. She walks to you, not floats, but walks, her feet just brushing the chapel stones. You blink. Did you? I've been practicing. You both laugh. And then she says something that changes everything. There's a way I might walk further, but only if you help me. You straighten. How? There's a man who cursed this land, a priest who locked me here with prayers not born of mercy but fear. He tried to seal me away, and he succeeded. Almost. You feel the hairs rise on your arms. He's buried beneath the chapel, below even the crypt, in a tomb no one visits. His words still whisper through the stone. That's what keeps me tethered. You rise. Then let's unwhisper them. You can't destroy him, she warns, but you might replace him. You tilt your head. With what? A promise. You pace the altar, thoughts churning. So this isn't about love, not just. Number, it's about remembrance, about choosing what lives. Historians still argue whether curses in medieval texts were literal or metaphorical, words written to enforce silence, shame and control. But here, the curse is real, and maybe it's time to rewrite it. You take the scroll of your own handwriting, the vow you copied from the monastery, and you begin again. This time it's not just a marriage certificate, it's a declaration that Elowen lived, that her love was real, that her story was buried but not lost. When you finish, you light a candle and drip wax to seal the edges. Then you carry it beneath the chapel, deeper than before, to a place the light barely touches, and you lay it atop a broken stone. Elowen watches. She says nothing, but the chapel exhales, and you, for the first time, feel like you truly belong. The breath of the chapel is subtle, but you feel it. The moment the scroll touches the broken stone, something loosens. The silence isn't as heavy. The chill that clung to the crypt like a second skin thins. Even the shadows seem less hostile, more like quiet guests, not prison bars. You rise slowly, joints creaking in protest. Elowen stands near the entrance to the crypt, her eyes fixed not on the scroll but on you. He's quieter now, she says. Who? You ask, though you already know. The priest. I used to feel him like frost underfoot, a muttering presence in the stone. He's fading. You look back at the broken slab. Good. But not gone. That makes sense. Curses don't shatter all at once, they unwind like stubborn thread, but you've started pulling. Back upstairs, the chapel feels warmer still. You glance at the ring on the altar. It seems brighter, as if the gold remembers its meaning. Elowen follows you to the threshold and stops. Her feet now hover just above the old floor, not out of haunting habit, but because she hasn't quite decided to land. Does it hurt, you ask? Number, you sure? It's not pain, it's memory. My body remembers what it felt like to stand. It's choosing to try again. That lands somewhere deep in you. You go outside and gather fresh pine branches, strip them with a dagger and weave a crude wreath. You hang it above the chapel door. A new tradition, perhaps. Later you find yourself near the graves again, your gravestone still faint but unchanged. You crouch before it, finger trailing the carved lines. Elowen joins you. You keep checking, she says. I want to know if I've decided without realizing it. You haven't. You look up at her. But part of me already lives here. Yes. That doesn't scare you. She tilts her head. It comforts me. You rise, brushing moss from your knees. What if I leave one day and don't come back? Then I'll wait. You exhale through your nose. You've done that before. Not for you. You let that sit between you for a moment. The weight of it. I want to know who cursed this place, you say. Really know. She nods once, then I'll take you. She leads you not into the crypt, but outside, into the woods, past the graves, beyond the grove, through a winding path of thorn and root. The deeper you go, the older the trees feel, their trunks twisted, their bark scarred, as if even the forest remembers. Eventually you come to a clearing. At its centre, a stone well choked with ivy and moss. This was his, Elowen says, the priest. You circle the well slowly. Why here? He cursed what he feared. This was where he came to speak his oaths, alone, not to God, to something else. Your skin prickles. She glides to the edge. He hated me because I refused his penance. I told him I loved a man who died outside a wedding altar. I told him I would not repent for it. You stare into the darkness below. There's no sound, no echo, just depth. And so he made you haunt. Yes. You step back. Can it be undone? Not by hate, not by violence, only by outlasting him. You pull a scrap of parchment from your satchel. You write one line. She was not yours to silence. As you drop it into the well, it vanishes without a sound. When you turn, Elowen is glowing brighter than ever. Historians still argue whether medieval wells were symbols of wisdom or traps for spirits. But right now, it feels like you've spoken to something that remembers being feared and chose to forget you instead. Back at the chapel, you collapse onto a pile of old cloaks. Elowen hovers nearby, content. You look up at her and say, "He can't have you anymore." She doesn't respond. She doesn't need to. The night comes, and for once, the chapel sleeps peacefully with you in it. You wake before dawn to find the fire has gone out, but the room is still warm. The chapel breathes differently now. There's a softness in the air, as if the very walls have exhaled some ancient tension and are slowly remembering how to relax. The wind through the broken rose window no longer whistles like a warning. It hums like the last verse of a lullaby. You sit up slowly, rubbing the sleep from your face, and glance toward the altar. She's there. Elowen, not waiting, just being. She stands with her back to you, looking up at the window like she's trying to decode the shapes in the remaining glass. Do you see it differently now, you ask, pulling your cloak tighter around your shoulders? She doesn't turn, but her answer drifts back to you. It used to look like a trap. Now it looks like a clock. You rise and join her. The light through the window splashes the stone floor in pale blues and dull reds. Most of the glass is gone, but what remains tells part of a story. A rider, a crown, a flame. I wonder what it was meant to mean, you muse. Salvation, probably. You tilt your head. Or something someone wanted to believe was salvation. She laughs softly. You've become suspicious. You smirk. I've been living with a ghost bride in a cursed chapel. Caution seems reasonable. She turns to you. Her face is clearer again. There are fewer flickers now, fewer transparent shifts. She looks less like something summoned and more like someone here by choice. I think you're almost whole, you whisper. I think you're almost lost, she replies, and there's no malice in her voice, just observation. You nod. I don't know where I end anymore, you admit. Where the night stops and the memory begins. Then maybe it's time for something else. You blink. Something else? You've been a knight, a wanderer, a storyteller. Perhaps you're ready to become a keeper. The word lands with weight. A keeper of the chapel, of her, of the stories that otherwise vanish in the wind. You consider it in silence. It's not what you thought you wanted years ago when you first picked up a sword. But it fits now, in a quiet way that doesn't need explanation. You look down at your hands, calloused, tired, still steady. If I stay, who do I become? Elowen steps closer. The one who remembers, the one who speaks. You sit on the edge of the altar platform. That means giving up a lot. It means giving up what no longer fits. You stare at her. Have you already made your choice? She nods once. I no longer wait. I live. It's a small sentence, but in it is a revolution. For centuries Elowen existed in a loop, bound to a vow that was never fulfilled, imprisoned by a fear disguised as piety. Now she is choosing. Not begging, not haunting. Choosing. The morning deepens. Birdsong filters in from the trees beyond the graveyard. Somewhere, far off, a rooster crows. The world continues. As you step outside, the fog is thinner now. The graveyard no longer looks like a wound in the land. It looks like a memory kept tidy. You walk to your stone again. Your name still rests there. But this time, something is different. A second word is beginning to form beneath it. Keeper. You smile faintly. So the chapel agrees. Back inside, you find Alaun seated on a half-collapsed pew, her hands folded neatly in her lap. I want to rebuild this place, you say. Not just the stone, the meaning period. Then start. I'll need help. She nods. You'll have it. You aren't sure whether she means herself or something larger, but you accept it either way. Historians still argue whether old buildings hold memories, or whether it's just people like you projecting too much hope onto old stone. But when you look around this chapel, you don't see just ruin. You see pages waiting to be rewritten. You see a place where love once died and might now begin again. You see home. The rebuilding begins not with stone or mortar, but with a broom. You find it leaning against a forgotten corner of the chapel, the handle half rotted but intact enough to grip. You run your fingers over it, imagining some long-dead caretaker doing the same, humming a hymn under his breath, or maybe grumbling about muddy footprints on sacred floors. You start at the front, sweeping centuries of dust, bits of broken tile, and the dry remnants of spiderwebs into small, tidy piles. The work is slow, strangely satisfying. Elowen watches in silence, a faint smile curling the corners of her lips. I thought you might help, you mutter, pushing another pile into a cracked corner. I am helping, she says with exaggerated grace. Supervising is a lost art. You snort. You're a tyrant. I prefer benevolent spectre of domestic order. You find yourself grinning. The chapel echoes with the sound of laughter, yours and hers overlapping like music from mismatched strings. And for a moment, it feels exactly like the life you never knew you wanted. When you stop to rest, she sits beside you on a stone slab that once served as a base for a long-gone statue. She's more solid now. Not entirely, not enough to touch, but less air, more presence, more real. You look around. You know, you say, we might need more candles, maybe stained glass shards, and I should find a way to fix that door before winter. You're making plans. I guess I am. That means you've chosen. You nod slowly. Not forever, not yet, but for now. She tilts her head. Then for now, I'll stay too. You walk together through the ruins that afternoon, pointing out where repairs could happen. The steps need rebuilding. The roof needs patching. The crypt, maybe, needs less drama. She listens patiently, chiming in occasionally with odd memories. How the tapestries once looked. How the bells used to sound at dusk. And then she says, there's one more thing you should see. You follow her outside, through the graveyard, past the grove beyond the priest's well. This time she leads you farther, up a winding deer path until the trees part, and you find yourself looking down on the entire forest. The chapel below is just a shadow nestled in green, nearly swallowed by the trees, but above, endless sky. This is where I used to come to think, she says, when I was alive. You sit together in the tall grass. The breeze is clean here, full of pine and possibility. I've been thinking too much, you murmur. Then think with me. You lay back, staring up at the clouds drifting overhead. One looks like a dragon. One looks like a loaf of bread. One looks like absolutely nothing, and still manages to move you. You feel her beside you, not touching, but close enough to quiet your thoughts. Historians still argue whether love stories like yours ever existed outside the pages of courtly romance. Knights and ghost brides, haunted chapels, oaths beneath ivy-covered windows. You decide it doesn't matter. What matters is the now. The breeze, the breath beside you, the chapel being swept clean one morning at a time. When you return to the ruins, you find something waiting on the altar. A bird, dead, but peaceful. A robin, wings folded neatly as if placed with care. You frown. Is this a sign? Elowen leans closer. It's a gift. A gift? The chapel is changing, so the world brings tribute. You glance down. There's a sprig of thyme tucked under the bird's wing, and you take it. Not the bird, just the thyme. You place it in the window where sunlight lands each afternoon. It smells like memory. It smells like something new. That night you find the letters again. Hers to you, written long before she knew your face. You read a few aloud to her. She listens, laughing at the awkward ones, tearing up at the hopeful ones. You once wrote that you'd know me by my silence, you say, and I did. Because I don't talk much. Because your silence was kind. You place the letters back in the box, close the lid. You'll write new ones? She smiles gently. Now I can speak to you directly. And in that moment the chapel no longer feels haunted. It feels inhabited. The weather changes. A soft autumn arrives, brushing golden light across the forest canopy. The wind carries the scent of apples and wood smoke from distant villages, though you no longer feel the need to return to them. Life hums in small things now. The sweep of a broom, the crackle of a twig underfoot, the sound of your own heartbeat echoing in the quiet. Elowen begins to appear in the daytime more easily. The light no longer scatters her form. Her veil is gone altogether now, folded neatly on the altar, untouched. You never asked why she took it off. You don't need to. You no longer call her Ghost. You just call her Elowen. That morning you plant herbs near the chapel wall. You dig with a borrowed trowel, your hands soon caked in earth. Sage, mint, rosemary, all things that can live on scraps of sun and stone. Elowen hovers nearby, laughing as you smear dirt across your face while trying to scratch your nose. You're terrible at this, she says. I'm improving, one dead mint sprig at a time. You buried it upside down, you sigh. It wanted to see the sky. You pause and lean back on your heels, wiping your hands on your cloak. I never thought I'd be a gardener. You never thought you'd be a ghost's companion either. You glance at her. Am I? You're more than that now. She kneels beside you. Not floats, not shimmers. Kneels, her form casting a faint shadow across the soil. You're almost alive, you whisper. She doesn't deny it. Later you find the chapel bell. It's buried beneath a fallen timber in the back. Rusted, cracked along one side, but whole. You run your fingers over it, marvelling at the thickness of the metal, the green creeping into its surface. You clean it, polish it, set it up again, lashing it to a sturdy branch above the chapel arch with the help of an old pulley you scavenge from the woodshed behind the monastery. You tug the rope once. The sound is low, fractured and oddly sweet. It doesn't ring like a call to prayer. It rings like a memory waking up. Elowen appears beside you. It hasn't rung since I died. You look at her. Now it rings for life. That night the two of you sit on the steps outside, wrapped in your cloak, sharing a loaf of rye bread you bartered for with an old fur you no longer need. You eat slowly, tearing it in chunks, dipping it in oil from a tiny flask. She watches every bite as though she can taste it with her eyes. I wish you could eat, you say. I do, a little, through you. You offer her a piece anyway. She touches it. It stays whole. But when you eat that same piece, it tastes better. You tell her stories. Of your mother, who used to dance while stirring porridge. Of the first time you saw snow. Of the innkeeper who mistook you for a priest and made you bless his goat. She laughs so hard at that last one she nearly vanishes from the effort. You both fall silent as the moon rises. Then Elowen says, "You could leave tomorrow and I wouldn't follow you." You turn slowly. Why? Because I'm not tethered by sadness anymore. I'm tethered by choice. You let that sit between you. That means you're free. It means I choose to stay. You nod. And then you tell her something you haven't dared say aloud. I think I'm falling in love with a woman who doesn't breathe. She tilts her head. I think I'm remembering how to. And in that moment, something inside you shifts. Not like a decision. Like a door gently swinging open. Historians still argue whether medieval romances ever truly crossed into the supernatural, or if those were simply allegories for grief and longing. You're not interested in what historians believe anymore. You know what's real. The feel of her presence beside you. The warmth that fills the chapel each time you speak her name. The ache when you imagine her fading again. You rise, walk to the bell rope and ring it once more. Its cracked song floats through the trees and for the first time in centuries. Elowen closes her eyes and breathes in. The first snow comes quietly. You wake to silence, the kind that only happens when the world is buried in white. The chapel's old stones are frosted, the grave markers softened beneath pale mounds. Even the trees hold their breath, weighed down by blankets of snow as light as lace. You step outside, boots crunching faintly in the drift. The cold hits your face, sharp and honest. Elawan appears beside you, her form shimmering, yet stronger in the stillness. She looks around slowly as though seeing winter for the first time in centuries. "It's beautiful," she whispers. "You've forgotten snow?" I remember the idea. Not the feeling, not the hush. You kneel, scoop a handful of powdery white in your gloved hands and blow gently. The flakes scatter into the air, catching light, dancing. She watches them like someone witnessing a miracle. Back inside, the chapel feels cosier than it has any right to. The old hearth in the corner, you found it hidden behind a crumbling wall weeks ago, is lit now, crackling with stolen wood from a long-abandoned orchard cart. You hang your cloak by it, shaking snow onto the stone floor. Elawan drifts near the warmth. You smile. You almost look cold. "I think I remember what it was like to be cold," she says. "It wasn't unpleasant, not when someone held your hands." Your smile fades to something gentler. "I can try." You reach out, your hand hovering just near hers, and for the briefest moment, just long enough to doubt yourself, you feel her fingers touch yours. Only a whisper, only a breath of contact, but there. She gasps, a sound that rings like glass. "You felt that?" "Yes." You both stare at your hands. "You're not fading," you say. "You're coming back." She doesn't answer, she just reaches again. This time you feel the slightest pressure, like a spider silk thread drawn across your palm. It sends warmth all the way to your ribs. That day you work together, you mend a broken shutter. She shows you somehow where the old hinges used to sit. You mix ash into the mortar to patch a wall. She hums a tune that sets your rhythm right. Together you hang the preserved herbs from the rafters, mint and rosemary tied in neat bundles, symbols of warding, of remembering. Later you sit before the hearth, the last of your bread warming on a flat stone. Elawan hovers near, watching the flames. She lifts her hand, and the fire flickers. Not wildly, not dangerously, just enough to suggest it recognises her now. "You're part of this place," you murmur. "So are you. I wonder if I was always meant to be." "Maybe not, but you are now." You turn toward her. If I stayed forever, would you be happy?" "I don't know, but I'd be real." You both let that truth hang in the air, heavier than snow, more honest than vows. You rise, walk to the door, and open it to the night. Outside, the world is silver. Moonlight catches on the snow, making it glow like the inside of a dream. And there, beneath the tree where the fox once yipped, you see footprints. Tiny, delicate, fresh. "Elawan, do you see that?" She steps beside you, her form faint in the glow. "I didn't make those." "Then who did?" She doesn't answer. You step outside, following the prints to the edge of the grove. They vanish beneath a fallen log, but beside it, carved into the bark, a single word. Remember? You trace it with your glove. And when you return to the chapel, Elawan is waiting with a question. "Would you take my hand again?" You hold it out, and this time you feel her fingers close around yours. Not shadow, not mist. Warm, real. And as snow begins to fall again outside, you sit beside her and understand. You're no longer dreaming beside the dead. You're waking beside the living. The days shorten. Sunlight filters into the chapel in thin gold ribbons, arriving late and leaving early. The cold is constant now. You keep a fire burning most of the day, the smell of smoke clinging to your cloak, your beard, even your boots. You no longer mind it. Elawan is growing stronger. She walks more often than she floats now, her steps light. Careful, but real. She hums when she moves through the chapel, sometimes too quiet to hear, other times loud enough to make you pause and listen. She touches things, not just you. The books you rescued from the monastery, the broom handle, the edge of the hearthstone, the frame of the old window, where she once gazed out without casting a reflection. Now she does, faint, wavering, but there. You both notice it at the same time. She gasps softly. You turn. And for the first time in who knows how many years, Elawan sees herself. She stares at the shape in the glass. Her face, her shoulders, her dress. "I look different," she whispers. You step closer. "You look alive." She touches the pane. Her fingers don't pass through this time. They press against the cold glass and leave a foggy mark. Outside, snow gathers on the windowsill. Inside, she smiles. I don't know what this means, you say. I do, she replies, her voice soft. It means the curse is almost broken. You sit by the fire, sharing what little food you've saved for winter. Dried fruit, stale bread softened with water, a bit of cheese you wrapped in linen and nearly forgot. Elowen doesn't eat. Not really, but she watches you with such quiet focus it feels like sharing. You tell her about your first winter as a knight, freezing in a canvas tent, eating dried turnips and regretting every life choice. She tells you about her last winter, watching from the chapel windows as snow fell over an empty courtyard, wondering if anyone would come. I almost didn't, you say, but you did. You glance toward the box of letters on the altar. You still haven't read them all. Some part of you is afraid to, afraid of reaching the last one. But today you open a new one. Her handwriting is steady, lovely. She writes about the stars, the colour of the ivy in spring, the way she used to braid her hair. And in this one she signs off differently, to the one I have not yet met. Please do not forget me, even if you leave, even if I fade. Please remember I was here. Please remember I felt. You fold the letter carefully, place it back in the box, and rest your hand on the lid. I won't forget. I know. Later, as you mend a broken bench leg, Elowen appears behind you. I want to show you something. You follow her to the far side of the chapel, where a wall of ivy conceals a hidden door, one you've passed 100 times but never thought to test. She presses her hand to the stone. It creaks, then shifts. Behind it, a tiny chamber filled with candles, all unlit. On the wall, carved deep into the stone, is a single sentence in Latin. You translate it aloud slowly. When one remembers, the other may remain. Elowen steps inside. The candles flicker, without flame, without heat, just the shimmer of light. She turns to you. Do you know what this means? You nod. It's not about haunting. It's about holding. She walks to you, reaches for your hand. You feel her fingers close around yours. Fully now. Solid. Steady. Real. Then I don't need to be a ghost anymore, she says. Your throat tightens. Outside, the wind howls across the graveyard. A storm is coming, but inside, everything is still. You light one candle, its flame holds, and you whisper, I remember. The storm arrives that night, fierce and loud. Wind thrashes the trees outside and snow slams against the chapel stone like fists demanding entry. You brace the old door with timber and rope, double-check the fire and wedge every crack with rags and scraps of cloth. Elowen stands in the centre of the chapel, watching the shadows move across the walls. I used to be terrified of storms, she says. You? Afraid of anything? It wasn't the thunder, it was the waiting, the helplessness. She walks toward you. Her feet make no sound on the floor, but she doesn't hover anymore. Her gown brushes the ground. She's part of the world now, stitch by stitch. You're not helpless now. No, she agrees. I have you. You pour the last of the mulled wine into a battered clay cup and hand it to her out of habit. Her fingers close around it, not completely, not with weight, but they hold. She brings it to her lips. The liquid doesn't vanish. Not completely. Some of it lingers. You watch her taste it. Her eyes close. She exhales. It's bitter, she whispers, and warm, and alive. You sit beside her near the fire, both of you wrapped in your own kind of quiet. Outside, the world rages. Inside, you begin to read another letter. This one is different. It's addressed to someone else. To herself. Dear Elowen, if you're reading this, something has changed. You're no longer only memory. You have found someone. You're becoming real again. Do not be afraid. You stop. She nods. I wrote it a year after the wedding that never happened. I buried it in the altar base. It must have moved. You continue. Do not cling to sorrow. Let love make you more than longing. Let it make you whole. You fold the letter, hands shaking. You left yourself a map. I was afraid no one else would. The fire crackles between you. A gust rattles the walls, but they hold. You're going to survive this storm, you say. So are you. As midnight approaches, the wind shrieks loud enough to shake the rafters. Somewhere outside, a tree cracks and falls. You rise, tug your cloak tighter, and walk the chapel perimeter, checking your makeshift reinforcements. When you reach the broken rose window, you pause. Snow is piling on the sill and on the snow. Footprints. tiny barefoot impressions. You follow them with your eyes. They lead from the window toward the altar. "Elowen," you say softly, "come here." She joins you, eyes narrowing at the marks. "Not mine." You kneel beside the prints. Too small to be mine, too deliberate to be animal. She crouches beside you, examining them, and then she whispers, "It's the chapel." You blink. What? It's becoming aware. It's remembering its people. You rise slowly, heart pounding. You think, it's alive? Number, but it wants to be. You stare around you, at the walls you've swept, the cracks you've patched, the candles you've lit, the stories you've spoken aloud. Maybe a place this love doesn't stay empty forever. You walk to the altar and place your hand on the stone. Warm, not hot, not magic, just warm. I don't know what this means. It means we keep going. She leans in, forehead nearly touching yours. We let the chapel become whatever it wants, together. Historians still argue whether sacred places held divine energy, or just collected the emotions of those who worshipped inside. You've stopped caring what scholars think. You know this chapel lives, because you live in it, and because she does. The storm rages on, but you feel no fear, not this time, because in the heart of it all you found stillness, and beside you, Elowen's hand real in yours. By morning the storm has passed. You wake to a silence so complete it feels like a blessing, the kind of hush that only follows the roar of wind and cracking trees, a deep breath held by the world itself. You step outside into a landscape transformed. Snow blankets every inch of the forest. The trees bend gently under its weight, and the light is soft, diffused through a veil of mist that hasn't yet burned away. It's the kind of morning that makes everything feel newly born. Elowen stands beside you on the chapel steps. Her breath mists the air. You both notice it at the same time. You turn to her. You're breathing. She lifts a hand to her mouth, eyes wide with wonder. It doesn't feel like memory. "No," you say softly. "It's real." She takes a deeper breath, slowly, as if afraid it will disappear again. It doesn't. You watch her chest rise and fall. Her cheeks colour slightly in the cold. Her feet leave faint prints in the snow now. She squints at the light. Even the wind plays with her hair. You swallow. "Elowen, you're alive." She doesn't speak. She just weeps. Tears, not mist, not illusion, run down her cheeks. They freeze at her jawline. She laughs through them, covering her mouth with both hands. You catch her before she falls to her knees. You hold her, fully, firmly, as if she's always been made of flesh and bone, and she holds you back. Inside the chapel everything is warmer now. The candles light more easily. The fire catches quickly, greedily. The walls don't creak with the cold anymore. They sigh in contentment. You sit together, close, her head on your shoulder, watching the flames. "I don't understand how this happened," you say. "You didn't try to fix me," she whispers. "You remembered me instead." Historians still argue whether resurrection in folklore was metaphorical, a symbol of forgiveness or release. But you're not looking at metaphor. You're holding her. Later, you walk together to the hidden chamber with the carved inscription, "When one remembers, the other may remain." Elowen touches the letters. They glow briefly beneath her fingers. "We need to finish the story," she says. "What do you mean?" "The chapel remembers everything but the ending. We have to write it." You nod slowly. "So, we give it a new ending? Number?" She looks at you. "We live one." You spend the next few days doing just that. You hang a new bell rope. You mend the broken roof beam. You carve names into the chapel wall. Not just yours or hers, but those forgotten. Rennick, the priest, the other souls who pass through. You write the stories down in a new book you start by hand. Elowen fills the margins with her memories. You draw poorly. She corrects you with better sketches. And one evening, just after the sun sets behind the hills, she says it. "I want to be married." You blink. "Elowen!" Not to bind myself again, but to mark the change, to seal the life we've built, to make it real in every way it can be. You feel tears prick your eyes. "Then we'll do it," you whisper. "Tomorrow." You nod. "I'll prepare everything." And you do. You find flowers frozen in the snow and thaw them by the fire. You cut fir branches and hang them along the altar. You polish the broken ring with ash and wool until it shines like something new. You dress in your best. Worn, yes, but clean and mended. You even find an old bit of ribbon and tie it around your wrist. That night, you barely sleep. But you don't need to. You lie beside her in the chapel, her fingers laced with yours. Her pulse, beats against your skin. And in the stillness between candle flickers, you whisper, "I do." She doesn't answer yet. She simply smiles and waits for morning. The chapel wakes with you. Soft light spills in through the cracked rose window, casting pale gold across the stone floor. Birds gather in the trees beyond the graveyard, their calls muted by snow, but no less insistent. Even the wind seems to pause, holding its breath. You dress slowly, not in armour, in simplicity. A clean tunic, a wool cloak, and the worn boots that have carried you through too many forests, through battlefields and ruined paths, and finally, here. You leave your sword behind. Elowen waits by the altar. She wears no veil, no illusion of silk, just a white linen shift, tied at the waist with the same green ribbon that once held her letters together. Her hair, long, auburn, loose, catches the morning light. She is not a ghost. She's not a memory. She is Elowen. She smiles when she sees you, and something ancient in the chapel seems to shift. The moss at the base of the walls brightens. A crack in the roof lets in a single sunbeam that lands perfectly across the altar. No guests, no priest, just the two of you, and the chapel that watched it all. You stand across from her. "I never expected this," you say quietly. "Neither did I. But I knew I'd find something here. And I knew someone would." You take her hand. It's warm, firm, alive. You both stand in silence for a moment, hearts beating in rhythm. Then she speaks, her voice low but steady. "I vow to remember. Not the pain, not the waiting, but this moment, this life, however long it lasts." You nod. "I vow to hold this space, to keep the stories, to carry you, not as burden, but as breath, as choice dot." The air changes. The flame in the hearth rises an inch, the walls grow quieter, the bell rope sways on its own. She places the ring, her ring, on your finger. It doesn't pass through, it settles. Perfectly, you do the same. A band of bark and leather, bound with a copper thread you found while mending the bell tower. It fits her, because it was always meant to. Historians still argue whether a place can sanctify love, or if love is what sanctifies a place. But as you stand there, hand in hand, no crowd, no kingdom, no witness but stone and sky, you know the truth. This place has always been sacred. Because of her, because of you, you kiss her, and she kisses you back, not a dream, not a shadow, not a whisper. Her lips are warm, software real. The bell tolls above, one long low note, not from your hand, from the chapel itself. Outside, a flock of birds takes to the sky. The snow melts slightly at the edges of the grave markers. A few flowers bloom beneath the frost, stubborn and bright. You don't say anything. Neither does she. You just hold each other. Two souls no longer wandering. The day passes gently. You eat together, bread, preserved apples, a bit of cured meat you saved for something special. She eats slowly, savouring every bite like it's the first time she's ever tasted anything. Maybe it is. Later you walk the graveyard. Your name is still on the stone, but now, next to it, a new word has appeared. Chosen. You run your fingers across the carving. Elowen presses her palm to yours. You don't speak of what comes next, because now, finally, you're not afraid of it. Snow gives way to thaw. You hear it before you see it. The drip of icicles melting from the chapel roof. The soft hiss of snow turning to slush beneath the trees. Each day the forest wakes a little more, the branches less heavy, the air less still. The sun lingers longer in the afternoon, and with it, Elowen changes. She begins to move farther from the chapel. It starts with short walks into the graveyard, then to the river where you first bathed your aching hands after repairing the steps. She stoops to touch the moss, to skim her fingers along bark. Once you catch her lifting a handful of snow to her lips. She tastes it, and laughs. "It's sharp," she says, "and fleeting." You smile. "Like a memory." She nods. "But now it's mine again." You walk the path to the riverbank together, where the water flows faster each day, cutting through ice like ink through parchment. Elowen watches the current. "This place was a prison for so long," she says. "I didn't know it could be something else." You toss a pebble into the stream. It was waiting. So was I. Back at the chapel, the herbs you planted begin to bud. Mint pushes stubbornly through half-frozen soil. A single sprig of rosemary unfurls green against the grey. You spend your mornings tending the grounds, patching the roof, carving wooden benches from fallen logs. Your evenings are spent reading beside the fire, Elowen curled beside you, listening. She doesn't drift anymore. She leans, she rests, she sleeps. You wake once to find her breathing evenly, her hand tangled in yours, her hair splayed across your shoulder. You don't move. Not for a long time. Spring pushes into the forest with slow determination. Birds return. A fox trots along the edge of the grove. You find fresh tracks by the chapel door every morning. Animal, human, hard to say. And then, one day, a visitor. You're chopping wood when the bell rings. Twice without wind. You freeze. Elowen appears at your side, brow furrowed. You glance toward the chapel door. Outside stands a woman, middle-aged, cloaked, mud on her boots. She's holding a lantern, even in daylight. You step forward. "Can I help you?" She eyes you warily. "Are you the knight who lives here?" You nod. "I am." "And the woman?" You hesitate. Elowen stands just behind you. The visitor narrows her eyes as if seeing a shape she can't quite name. "People say this place is waking," she says. "The chapel, the woods, the graves." You nod again. "It is? And you've stayed?" "I chose to." She studies you. "What did it give you?" You glance at Elowen. You could say love. You could say purpose. You could say peace. But instead you say, a second chance. The woman nods once, then reaches into her satchel and pulls out a book. Old. Weathered. "I was told someone was keeping records here again." You take the book from her hands, blank pages. "I've started a few volumes," you say, "but there's always room for more." She bows slightly, turns and leaves without another word. Elowen stands beside you, watching her disappear into the trees. "They'll come again," she says. You nod. "We'll be ready." That night, you write her name in the new book. Elowen Morel, wife, keeper, returned. Then, beneath it, you write your own. And next to it, one final word, belonging. Summer arrives like a secret finally whispered aloud. The forest bursts into song, crickets, frogs, birds returning to long-forgotten nests tucked beneath chapel eaves. The once dead garden outside flourishes. Your herbs spread. Wildflowers creep in from the edges like guests at a feast who forgot they were invited. The chapel isn't ruined anymore. Still humble, yes, still weathered, but no longer abandoned. There are seats to sit on, a door that closes, a roof that doesn't leak when it rains. Most days you leave the door open so the breeze can carry the smell of rosemary and wood smoke through the nave. Elowen moves freely now. She walks with you through the woods, wades ankle deep in the river, even ventures with you to the nearest village once. The people stare, but politely. The children watch her with curious eyes, whispering about the lady in white. She smiles at them. No one calls her a ghost, they call her wife. You carve a new plaque above the chapel entrance. Elowen helps you decide on the words. Together you settle on something simple. Here, love was chosen. Visitors come more frequently now. They bring bread, scraps of parchment, seeds, even news. You've become something of a story, a legend growing at the edge of the map. The knight who stayed, the chapel that breathed again, the woman who never left. They ask to see the graveyard. You walk them through it gently, pointing out the stones without names, the ones you've begun to mark. Elowen tells them the stories, who each belonged to, what they carried, why they mattered. They listen. Some cry, some leave tokens. The gravestone with your name still stands. But now it's fully carved. Your name, chosen, keeper, husband, not yet. You pass it often. You no longer fear it. One afternoon, you find Elowen by the rose window, a brush in hand. She's painting. Her strokes are delicate, confident. Golds and greens and deep blues spread slowly across the repaired glass. It's not a saint she paints. It's not a god. It's the forest, the chapel, a figure walking hand in hand with another. She turns to you and smiles. It was always meant to be ours. You don't argue. That evening a storm rolls in, gentle, warm, the kind that whispers instead of roars. You sit by the fire as thunder murmurs across the hills. Elowen rests beside you, feet curled beneath her, tracing the edge of a candle holder you found months ago, long forgotten under moss and dirt. I've stopped wondering if this is real, you say. She looks up. It is, you add, but that's not why I stayed. Then why? You take her hand, and it's no longer remarkable that you can. Because you made me remember what it means to live, not just breathe, not just obey, but to choose. She leans into you. That's all I ever wanted. Later, as rain patters against the roof and lightning illuminates the chapel in soft flickers, you speak aloud the words you once only thought. I love you, Elowen. She replies without hesitation. I love you too. And in that moment the storm pauses, as if to listen. The chapel stills, the candles burn lower, and you both sit quietly in the glow of a place no longer haunted, only inhabited. The first time a baby laughs inside the chapel, Elowen freezes mid-step. It's midsummer, the doors are wide open. A young couple from the Southern Valley had asked if they could rest inside on their way north. You offered food, water, a cool place to nap. You didn't expect their infant to wake from sleep, wriggle in his swaddling, and erupt into the kind of unfiltered giggle that makes even the old walls echo with joy. Elowen turns slowly, her hand still resting on the window frame. You're across the room, handing the father a tin cup of well water. But you feel her stillness from here. You walk to her. She's smiling, but her eyes brim with tears. I'd forgotten that sound, she whispers. You place your hand on hers. I never got to have that, she says. A child. A home filled with tiny laughter. I used to dream of it, when I was still waiting. You've made something else, you tell her gently. Not what you thought, but something living, something lasting. She nods slowly. I know. I just didn't realise I'd miss what I never had. The baby laughs again. Elowen laughs too, this time freely, no tears. Just the kind of gentle joy that takes root somewhere deep and blooms later. After the couple departs, full belly's blessed journey, you sit on the chapel steps watching fireflies blink in the dusk. Elowen rests her head on your shoulder. Would you have wanted children? You ask, softly. Maybe, she answers, but only if they were born of peace, not fear, not arrangement. You nod. That's how you came into my life. Not born, chosen. You sit in silence. Then she says, the chapel's stronger now. You glance at her. You feel it? Yes, the way it remembers. It holds the sound of that baby's laugh, the stories we've told, the names we've carved. You glance back inside. The air has a lightness to it, as if the stone itself were listening and approving. I wonder what would happen, you say, if we left. She turns slowly. Do you want to? Number. But I wonder. Then let's wonder out loud. You spend the next days testing the edges. You walk farther than before, past the river, beyond the hill, into the old trading path where moss covers wheel ruts from carts long forgotten. Elowen follows, and the world lets her, not with resistance, with permission. She touches the trees, the grass, the old stone markers. You visit a hermit who remembers hearing of a ghost bride decades ago. He watches Elowen and says, "You're warmer than I imagined." She smiles. So are you. You both laugh all the way back to the chapel. That night you light every candle. It feels like something worth celebrating. The walls glow golden. The herbs sway in the breeze. The bell above the door chimes gently even though the air is still. You dance. No music, just rhythm, just memory. Just Elowen's bare feet moving beside yours in a circle worn smooth by time and care. And when you rest, breathless and full of something wordless, she says, "Maybe we're not bound to this place anymore." You lie back on the stone, looking up at the stars through the broken rose window. Then where are we bound? She curls beside you, head on your chest, to each other. And that you think is more sacred than any chapel. It starts with the letter, folded tight, sealed with wax, slipped beneath the chapel door on a morning filled with birdsong. No courier, no signature, just your name written across the front in a careful looping hand. You hesitate before opening it. Elowen watches from the threshold, a fresh bouquet of wildflowers in her arms. She tilts her head, curious. "What is it?" she asks. You break the seal. The parchment is old, but the ink is fresh. It reads, "To the knight of the chapel, word has reached us of a man who lives with a woman who was once a whisper. Some believe it's myth. Others believe it's blasphemy. I believe it's hope." You pause. Elowen draws closer, placing the flowers gently on the window ledge. You continue, "I was told you keep stories now, that you tend the graves, that you name the unnamed, that you remember. I am dying, but I would like to be remembered. May I come?" You fold the letter with shaking fingers. "She wants to be remembered," you say aloud. Elowen closes her eyes for a moment. Then she's already halfway saved. The woman arrives 2 days later. She's thin, grey-haired, leaning on a cane, but her eyes are sharp. She carries a satchel filled with papers and a single silver comb. "I had a sister once," she says. "No one remembers her, not even me, fully, but I think she smiled like this place." Elowen leads her to a bench. You brew tea. You write down every detail the woman offers, names, places, half-memories wrapped in time's forgetting. When she leaves, she does so smiling. The chapel is quieter after. Not empty, just reflective. That evening, Elowen speaks gently. "We've become something new." You glance at her. "What do you mean?" "The chapel is not only a place for ghosts, it's a place for memories that wish to live again." You nod. "Like you. Like us." You walk to the graveyard together. You kneel before the unmarked plots and place small stones atop them, a tradition she told you about from her childhood. Each stone, a promise. A name will be remembered, a story will not vanish. And then she surprises you. She points to a patch of grass beside your own future grave. "I want one here." You blink. "A stone?" Her eyes soften. "A tree." You nod slowly. "We'll plant one. And when we're both gone," you take her hand. "Then someone else will walk through that door. And remember Asterisk." She leans into you. "Will you write it down? The whole story?" "I already have." In the chapel's book, you've begun a new section. Not just Elowen's tale, or your own, but those who came after, those who left tokens, those who stayed long enough to be changed. One entry reads, "A merchant left bread and a ring. He said it was all he had to offer. We told him it was enough." Another, "A girl kissed the chapel stones and whispered, 'Thank you for the courage.' And then, beneath those, a woman once forgotten, now written, now remembered." The candle beside the book burns low. Elowen rests her head on your shoulder. And in the silence you realise that you've built a life not just from love, but from listening. Autumn returns, not as a punishment, but as a reminder. The trees redden early this year. Leaves flutter into the chapel through the open window like lazy dancers, settling on the altar, on the book, on Elowen's shoulders. She doesn't brush them away. "Let them stay," she says. "They're proof of time. You've been here over a year now. The days flow slower, thicker, like honey warming on a fire. The villagers call you the Keepers. Sometimes they visit for blessings, sometimes to share stories, sometimes just to sit and feel the peace that lingers in the walls." Elowen reads more now. Books from passing monks, from tradesmen with carts full of ink and parchment. She pores over them like someone waking up in a world that finally speaks her language. And she writes. Pages and pages, letters and lines in that same gentle script she once used to write to you long before you arrived. She no longer writes to the unknown, she writes to the world. "If I am remembered, I am still here," she often says. One morning, while repairing the chapel door, you find a small pouch buried in the soil beside the stone steps. Inside, a locket, a feather, and a folded piece of silk with a name stitched carefully in red. It reads, Morel. "Elowen," you call gently. "Did you know someone left this for you?" She kneels beside you, her fingers brushing the items. "Number, but it's part of me." You place it in the book, wrapping it gently with ribbon. You add an entry. Today, someone gave Elowen her name back again. Not in voice, but in offering, in kindness. She watches you write it and then says quietly, "You've made me more than I was." You look at her, older in spirit, warmer in presence. "You've made me who I am." The chapel continues to shift in small, quiet ways. The moss on the walls recedes. Flowers bloom at the edges of the graveyard without your help. The bell above the entrance rings not in warning, but in welcome. One evening you notice something different. The unfinished window, the one that once framed the moon, now catches light in a strange new way. You walk to it, tilt your head. There, faintly visible in the rippled glass, the image of two figures standing side by side. One holds a staff, the other a book. You call Elowen over. She stares, then nods. It's us. You think the chapel did that? I think it remembers in light now, not just stone. You smile. I never knew how badly I needed a place that remembered. Most of us don't, she whispers, until we're forgotten. That night, as you sit together in the candlelight, Elowen braids her hair and hums a tune you've never heard before. What is that, you ask? A lullaby my mother sang the day before my wedding, the one that never happened. Until now, she smiles. Until now. You hum with her, learning it line by line, and when you sleep you dream not of death, not of ghosts, but of soft voices carried on autumn wind, and a chapel that holds them gently. The first frost of the second winter arrives unnoticed. You only see it the next morning, how the herbs glisten silver in the early sun, how your breath curls heavier, slower. The chapel's walls have grown thick with memory now, so you feel none of the chill inside. Even the stone beneath your feet holds warmth. Elowen wakes before you. You find her at the altar, barefoot, her hands pressed flat against the surface like someone anchoring herself between two worlds. She doesn't turn when you enter, just says softly, "It's almost time." You stop. For what? She smiles. To choose again. The words settle like snow in your chest. Quiet. Heavy. Familiar. Do you want to go? You ask. Number. Do you need to? She thinks a long time. The candle beside her flickers blue, then gold. Number. But the chapel might. You approach slowly. The place feels different today. Not darker. Brighter somehow. Like it's filling with something too large for walls. I thought we were done with this, you say. We're never done with choice, she replies gently. We just get better at making it. You sit beside her, the old book in your lap. You flip through the pages, your notes, her sketches, visitors' messages, pressed flowers, scrap paper vows, poems left anonymously in the corners of pews. I thought we were the end of the story, you say. We were just the part that stayed long enough to write it. That afternoon, you take down the last of the crumbling wall behind the altar, together, brick by brick. It once held the stain of silence, of curses whispered into stone. Now it comes down easily, like a door finally swinging open. Behind it you find another inscription, so old the edges have faded into moss. Let those who love well become the root. Let those who remember become the seed, and let those who remain become the song. You trace the words with your thumb. It's always been about memory, you murmur. Elowen nods, and return. Later you return to the grove, the one where you saw the tree crack during that first winter storm. Now it stands tall again, healed at the break. You sit beneath it and watch as Elowen ties a ribbon to one of its branches, a piece of her veil, now torn, weathered, and real. I want someone to find this one day, she says. And what will they think? That love stayed. Back in the chapel you write one last letter. Not to her, not to the world, to the next keeper, to whoever finds this. You are not here by accident. This place is older than forgetting. It remembers you already. Let it teach you how to stay. You place the letter beneath the altar stone. You kiss her hand. Her fingers are as warm as yours now. That night you sleep without dreams. But before sleep takes you fully, Elowen whispers in your ear, "We're still choosing." And you reply, "Then let's keep choosing each other." You wake to birdsong, not the hesitant, hopeful kind of early spring, but the full, riotous chorus of late summer. The chapel is glowing, truly glowing, not with magic, not with firelight, with something quieter, older, something born of walls that have listened, of footsteps that have returned, of names that have been said aloud and held. You rise from your bed near the hearth and see Elowen already standing by the window bathed in gold. Her feet touch the floor without hesitation. Her form doesn't flicker. She casts a shadow now, and her hair catches the sun like woven flame. She is no longer becoming. She is. You walk to her and wrap your arms around her waist. She leans back into you with a sigh that tells you everything. I had a dream, you whisper. So did I. I saw the chapel covered in vines, the roof gone. But people still came. They brought songs, bread, small children with loud voices. The bell still rang, even when no one pulled the rope. I saw a boy tuck a letter beneath the altar and say, "She'll hear me." Elowen nods. I saw it too. You walk to the graveyard together, barefoot. Your gravestone hasn't changed since autumn. It still reads, your name, chosen, keeper, husband, not yet. You smile. I think, you murmur, I won't be buried here. Elowen's eyes flick to yours. You kneel and begin to brush away the moss from the stone beside yours, one you haven't touched in months. Heron. But now the name has changed. Elowen Merell, remembered, returned, alive. You look up at her and she's crying. Not ghost tears, not echoes, real. Because this is real. Later that evening, the last page of the chapel's book waits on the altar. Elowen brings the ink. You bring the words. You write them together, your hand over hers. This was not the end, not the beginning. Just the place we chose to stay. As the sun sets, the chapel door swings open with the breeze, and a family steps in. Mother, father, and a child holding a bouquet of pine branches. They ask if they may sit. You welcome them in. Elowen lights the candles and you hand them warm bread. And the child, shy and wide-eyed, asks, "Are you the ghost knight?" You smile. No. Elowen answers gently, "He's just the man who remembered me." As twilight turns the walls blue, as voices soften, and a story becomes a lullaby, you realise you're no longer waiting. You are no longer haunted. You are home. And now, as you rest, eyes heavy, body still, I want you to drift with the chapel's breath. Can you feel it? That gentle exhale of peace after centuries of holding too much. The way the stones no longer weep, but hum, just a little. Let the forest surround you now, not with shadow, but with softness. Picture the ivy curling gently around the windows, the way sunlight filters through old glass like honey poured slow. Hear the crackle of the fire, low and lazy, the sound of a pen scratching across parchment as stories are written not for history books, but for hearts. Elowen is there, seated quietly by the altar, her hair tucked behind her ear, her eyes watching the candle flame dance. She hums. You might not know the tune, but your bones remember it. Maybe it's the song the trees sing in winter, or the one that plays when a name is finally said out loud. Let your breath slow, let the world slip into hush, because there is no more running, no more forgetting, only the place that held its breath long enough to meet you, the chapel, and love. Still choosing, still here, still yours. May your night be as gentle as Elowen's smile and your dreams as warm as the chapel's hearth. You're always welcome here.